Good afternoon. If we could do one thing really fast, can you take that picture off, right? Probably the worst thing that's going to happen is you have to look at me. You shouldn't have to look at me twice, all right? Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Look forward to talking about something that personally I think is really important. And I think it's applicable to our business, it's applicable to me. And I hope, and I really do hope this, it's applicable to you. I hope you find something, what we're going to talk about in the next 15 or 20 minutes, you can take back as a person, you can take back to your teams, you can take back to your organization. And it's this title right here, Continuous Reinvention in an Ever-Changing World, okay? Four really big words. Continuous, reinvention, and ever-changing, right? And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you again, and I'm going to show you why I think those things are so important, okay? Before I do, I've got to start with a disclaimer, okay? I am making this up, okay? There's not a fact, there's not a study, there's not empirical evidence. You've got the views of one person. Recognize those as such, okay? Apply any of this at your own risk. Thank you, Mark. Mark Hillman said, look, if you disclaim it, you can say anything you want, okay? The important thing is I believe this, okay? And I'll tell you why I believe it. And we're going to start with this quote. And this is a quote that Michael Redd in the back of the room, who leads digital and e-commerce for us, brought to me. And we had been talking for months about go faster, get there. And there was always this question of, do we know exactly where we're going? And we never knew exactly where we were going, right? And he said, I finally found somebody who speaks your language. And it's this guy, Greg S. Reed. Okay, I don't know who Greg S. Reed is, okay? But I love his quote. Write your goals in ink, okay? Write your goals in ink, but put your plans in pencil. And I think that's really important for each and every one of us. And I'll tell you why I think that's important. What do we do? What do we have to do as marketers? What's absolutely critical? We have to plan our plan, okay? Nobody can walk in and start talking about their business without a plan, right? We plan our plan. But guess what? You gotta be ready to adjust your plan, okay? And the reason is because your plan is not gonna be right, okay? And I say that to our teams all the time. Our team is in the back right here, okay? I say, we're wrong. Whatever forecast we have, whatever plan we have, we're wrong. And we gotta get comfortable with being wrong. And it's not about being right or wrong, it's about how are we gonna adjust, okay? So what does that mean to us, right? Oh, we got 2 slides here. 3 slides. Okay, why do I think this is so important? Okay? Why do I think I can tell you that you have to be able to plan your plan and adjust your plan? Okay? It's VUCA. Okay, now some of you are raising your hands, some of you are saying, oh, that's what I text back to my kids. Okay, VUCA, right? VUCA describes the world that we live in today. Okay, and what does it mean? It's a volatile world, right? It's an uncertain world, it's a complex world, and it's an ambiguous world. Okay, I didn't come up with this. You can go to McKinsey, you can go to HBR, you can learn a lot about VUCA. I would suggest it's really, really important that we do this, okay? The world that we live in, the world that we operate in, the world that we try and plan in today is so fundamentally different than anything that we've ever done in the past, okay? Understanding all of the changes, the amplitude and the frequency of change in this world is absolutely critical. And here's where I think it really becomes important for us that we have to internalize. There was a day and time, and anybody that's about my age probably remembers this date and time, where you could go back and it was about developing a plan. Could you operate your plan? Did you execute your plan, and did you deliver your plan? There's a company in Cincinnati, Ohio that's famous for that, right? Plan and operate and execute against the plan. And that works great in a non-VUCA world, okay? So if you look up here and you say in a low VUCA intensity world, you can lock a plan because nothing changes. The environment that you built the plan in remains constant. It's easy to plan, okay? I would suggest today's different. Today's a different world. We're always changing. The intensity of VUCA, the amplitude, the frequency of change is higher and greater and bigger and more pronounced than, frankly, most of us know what the heck to do with, right? You can't lock a plan. If you do, you're going to be wrong. Actually, if you do, I want to compete against you, all right? Because I guarantee you, if you got a locked plan that you locked 15 or 18 months ago and we're changing, we're going to beat you, all right? Here's what I want to do. That's the concept. That's the idea, right? It's simple. There's nothing breakthrough. All of you have thought through that stuff. What I want to do is try and make that relevant to how we've applied that at Team Marzetti, okay? First thing I got to do is I got to tell you what the heck a Team Marzetti is, okay? And then I got to explain why you should care that it's a Lancaster Colony company. All right, Team Marzetti, founded here, Columbus, Ohio, traded publicly under the umbrella of Lancaster Colony, okay? Prior was a holding company. Today we're a standalone pure food play, okay? So Team Marzetti is synonymous with Lancaster Colony, one of those you can buy on the stock exchange. All right? Why does that matter? Well, I would suggest that even though you probably don't know who we are, and admittedly we have an identity crisis, we've been incredibly successful. I mean, look at this company's growth through acquisition, through all the things that have acquired that have driven phenomenal success. You look at an 11% compound annual growth rate. We're also recognized as one of the dividend kings who continually increases our annual dividend. All right? Best kept secret in CPG. What are we really, though, right? Beyond just a growth chart. I would suggest that we strive every day to be the better food company. And this purpose and this culture is absolutely critical to who we are. Better people, better products, better culture, trying to make the world around us just a little bit better, just a little bit better. We're not the best, okay? But we want to be better every single day. You look on the left, you see our brands. You look on the right, great capability, okay? Right down the middle, $1.8 billion in sales. 60% of that is in our retail business. All right? So that's who we are. Buy Marzetti dressing. Here's the fun part about it, right? If you look at our retail business, 60% of the company is in the retail side of the house now. In just over 4 years, we've grown over $500 million, okay? And that looks like a pretty straight line and a pretty straight trajectory, okay? And I'm going to tell you, it has been anything but, okay? As easy and as nice and as linear as that looks, I would suggest it's 3 stages. And I'll break the 3 stages down for you and try and explain how that relates back to VUCA, okay? First stage, you walk in, you assess a business, and what do? You build the plan, right? Everybody's got a plan. Well, we had a great plan. We're going to be the better food company, best-in-class consumer foods. We're going to deliver top tertile growth. At the time, that was 3%, okay? You know, we were so into our plan. Look, we made a cool visual, right? Look at that. Isn't that great? The gears on the machine. We're going to get the gears turning, and each gear was going to turn the next gear, and the machine was going to run. A year into my tenure here, we started to turn the machine, right? We said we'd grow at 3%. We were growing at 3% in the second quarter of our fiscal year. Our back half plan was to grow at 5%. We were doing it. The plan was starting to take hold, okay? And guess what happened? Holy smokes, it hit all of us, right? The world changed. VUCA hit us right between the eyes, smacked us, kicked us, knocked us to the curb, okay? What happened in COVID? Well, in hindsight, we did a bunch of things that enabled us to win, okay? And I'll tell you the biggest thing that we did is we embraced the uncertainty and we moved fast. And in hindsight, moving fast, not knowing exactly where we were going to go, created advantage for us. In short, we blew up the plan, right? We had a plan. We had a plan, and the plan changed, okay? Think about what we were going to go do. We were going to go innovate, we were going to go execute, and we were going to go build a culture. And we're starting to do that. Think about the results that came. $0 were spent on equity marketing, okay? Everything we were doing was about retaining new triers that had come into our business, okay? We launched 0 new items. The whole plan originally built was to launch new innovation, You couldn't launch innovation in COVID, right? Look at this. We eliminated half the SKUs in our lineup. We couldn't get raw materials. We couldn't get labor into our plants. We couldn't make them. So we could have them, but it didn't do anyone any good, okay? And then last but not least, I really want to talk about this in a very high level for you because I think it's very informative for us. In February of 2020, our cumulative e-commerce, click and collect, retail partnership sales were $0. Okay? We didn't have e-commerce. Okay? Of all the priorities that we had to go chase, that was the lowest one. March 2020, people stopped going to stores, right? Everyone went to some sort of delivery, click and collect, whatever. This was the fastest growing channel. In 45 days, we stood up an e-channel practice, an e-commerce practice, okay? 45 days. Now, we didn't know where we were going, right? We certainly didn't have it right. We definitely didn't have the right partner because we've made a change since then, and we've gotten better. But I would tell you, being first, leaning in, and taking action has made us now overdeveloped in the channel, and we believe this is a competitive advantage for us, okay? And external praise is always nice. 2021, we were recognized as the 6th fastest growing mid-cap company by BCG and IRI, okay? So we leaned in, and it worked. But wait, right? There's more. So we had a plan was working, COVID comes, we get through COVID, and we think we're really, really good, right? And then inflation hits, okay? Now this number is huge, okay? Our annual expenditure on raw material cost is about $300 million. We had $125 million of commodity inflation come through, okay? That's disruptive. That's VUCA. That's volatile. That's a big frickin' number, okay? And that rocked us, okay? So what did we have to do? We had to build a revenue growth management function. We had to lean into a licensing capability and build that to be best in class. And we had to start rebuilding our own brands, okay? So once again, what did we do? We rebuilt, right? We rebuilt our plan. I love this slide, right? And it is tactical, and it's executional, and it's not anything that's sexy like marketing, right? 20. That's the number of price increases we took in the next 18 months across all of our brands, all of our categories. We took 3 price increases in most of our categories. Previously, right, we hadn't taken 20 price increases as a company. We took more in 18 months than we had in the history of our company, okay? Many of you who know us probably know us for this capability. We had a capability to license brands. We had a partnership with Olive Garden that was quite successful. We leaned into that full force. We are best in class with this capability. We now get inbound calls looking for other properties to take their property to market, okay? This is a game-changing capability for us, okay? We developed that because we had to. Last but not least, right, we began to rebuild ourselves. Okay, we took a hard look and we said, wow, where are we? Are we good? Are we bad? And like any of us, we had weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses we had was within our Marzetti franchise. We had 2 sub-brands, both of which had been long ago created, both of which were dying on the vine. Okay? We made the choice to blow them up, to consolidate them, to bring them together and make them more relevant as one. We launched that in May, okay? We were in the early days of bringing that to the marketplace. Great platform, clean label, 50 calories, 2 grams of sugar or less, and it tastes really, really great, okay? No trade-offs whatsoever. Now, full disclosure, okay? We're 3 months in. We're not where we want to be, okay? That's okay, right? That's what we have to face into. We're about 20% short of where we thought we would be right now. There's a whole host of reasons that drive that, many of which are beyond our control externally, okay? But we learn from it, we adjust our plan, and we come back and we build. Rinse and repeat, okay? All right, made it to the end. Okay, what do I think? This is the fully disclaimed total BS portion of the discussion. How do I crystallize this and try and make it somewhat digestible? There's a couple things that I believe to be true, right? Our jobs and the thing that we talk about is know what you can know, right? If it's knowable, we should know it, right? But we have to get comfortable and recognize and understand the fact that we just cannot know everything. And that's going to be okay, okay? Plan your plan, right? That's the starting point. Got to plan your plan, but you got to be ready, willing, and able to make the changes. Can't put your head in the sand and say, I got a plan and I'm right, okay? This one's really important. I think we proved it time and time and time again. Have a bias for action, right? Action will more often than not trump inaction. Go, right? If you get to the marketplace, you can learn, you can adjust, and you can learn on the fly, okay? This is a favorite. Good enough, fast enough, okay? It's always got to be good enough. But if you wait to be better or great or perfect, you're not going to be fast enough. So you got to find that right balance for you, your company, your organization. Good enough, fast enough. This is probably the biggest learning I've gotten through this process, okay? Acknowledge risk and accept it, okay? We used to have a lot of conversations and people would be very, very fearful, very reticent to make choices. They didn't want to lean into things. We start to unpack that, and the materiality of what we were talking about was very, very small. I said, look, here's the reality. I own this risk, okay? There is risk. We don't know what's going to happen, but I accept this risk. You be free, you go, and you go do what you need to do. Get this thing to the marketplace, and let's see what happens. Okay? This is the difference between being reckless and taking smart risks. Okay? And those are two fundamentally different things. When you lean in, quantify that risk, know what you're doing. What are you putting yourself in the way of? What could happen? Right? Know that to the best that you can. Okay? But more importantly, know what you're trying to learn. Right? Because a risk without learning is stupid. Right? A calculated risk that you can manage with a dedicated learning plan where you're really trying to get better, I think that's critical. Okay? And then the last one, right? Celebrate your wins and your learnings, right? And this is hard, right? We all get caught up in it, and nobody likes to lose, nobody likes to fail, but we're going to, okay? We're in a VUCA world. We can't control it, right? Things are going to change faster than we can move. That's going to have negative impacts on us. What do we have to do? We have to adjust. We have to learn from that. I started with a quote. I'll end you with a quote, okay? I think this is absolutely critical that we all start to internalize. You only fail when you fail to learn, okay? I can raise my hand. I told you about the Simply launch. We're going to fail, okay? But we're going to keep trying, and we're going to keep learning, and I think that's going to make us better. So that's the spirit. Yeah. I'll turn it over. You guys can fire away and tell me everything that's BS about the whole thing. All right? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. That was truly inspiring. Mark and I are just going to ask a few questions
All right.
about the work. We're going to look a little bit at innovation, a little bit at the recent work that we've done, and then kind of talk about culture.
All right.
My first?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I just want to, yeah, I know.
It's after lunch. Mark's a little tired.
I'm failing.
New York Bakery slide.
I just realized I'm wearing the same shirt now as I was in that headshot of me, so that's good. It's black.
Consistency.
So I wanted to lean in a little bit on experimentation, and New York Bakery was really the first brand we began working with you, and that was one of your things that you wanted to do was reimagine the brands. And we found white space. We landed on it being a gesture archetype. We created an essence of this notion of being the life of the party. I mean, it's garlic bread in large part, so it's kind of a big deal. But, and when we began to experiment on voice, and there's a slide that we can put up that, we wrote so many headlines, had so many thoughts, had so many good things, and instead of going into a focus group room and asking consumers that way, we released them. Like we put them in the market and tracked and did a lot of analysis to figure out, which ones were hitting and which ones weren't. It sort of all resulted in us enjoying a market share that we hadn't enjoyed in a while. It kind of all worked into this quick little case study that I think we'll play next.
New York Bakery came to us with a brand awareness and purchase intent problem. So the first thing we did to help them stand out was give them a voice worthy of a crowd pleaser like garlic bread. I mean, let's be honest, it's kind of a big deal. Then we focused our attention on driving purchase intent. Turns out, garlic bread doesn't always make the grocery list. But you know what always does make the grocery list? Pasta. Based on this insight, we launched the Toast of Italian Night campaign and set out not just to be a part of the meal. No, my friends, we declared ourselves the life of the party on Italian Night. And, well, it just kind of went from there. Even shopper marketing got in on the fun. Then we decided getting the influencers involved would be a good idea. You can imagine what happened after we sent them some garlic bread swag. And then we connected this whole full funnel integrated multimedia extravaganza back to a campaign landing page to help track the results. And once the garlic butter sauce settled, well, here's what happened. Time you're at a grocery store buying your pasta and your sauce, don't forget the main event, garlic bread.
So, as we look at that, how was experimentation, do you see that as something moving forward as we begin to look at more and more brands? And are there any challenges internally or externally with that kind of experimental mindset of getting to, what we're going to do?
Yeah, so here's, again, my view of the world, right? I would say that the job of the people in this room is harder than it's ever been, right? To be able to market in this environment, in this world, with this much fragmentation across everything is the most challenging thing to do, right? You got to be relevant, you got to be credible, you got to be authentic, all this, right? So to think that we in a room can sit here and say, well, I know exactly how the market's going to react to this thing, I would suggest is incredibly naive, okay? I've yet to meet a planner, a brand manager, whatever level, whatever creative, I love you, that is that good, right? That omniscient. And so to me, what has to be true is we have to get to the market and we have to learn. The single greatest teacher in this whole thing has to be the market.
Let's go back to your time at P&G. You alluded to the company down in Cincinnati, but this is the gentleman that basically created the brand love for Old Spice. And talk about that was during a time of change too, and how have the times of changed?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I think going through this discussion with you guys on how we present this story, right, really took me back to a lot of parallels. And I would say a lot of those principles, a lot of those things, a lot of what I'm espousing today actually emanated back then for a totally different reason, right? Excuse me. And what was true on Old Spice was the continuous re-improvement, right? And people look at that brand at various points in time and say, man, it was great. It was perfect. And I can tell you without question, every single year, we identified what the new challenge was, and we figured out what we had to do to reinvent it, right? And so that spirit of reinvention, that spirit of let's get to the market and let's try this and let's do that, really emanated there, okay? It was a time that had, I would say, less VUCA, but there were certainly some key forces, right? The internet was in its nascent stage in terms of brand building, right? And brands were trying to learn how to navigate that. But the single biggest one was, remember this phrase, metrosexuality, okay? Guys actually started to care what they look and smelled like. And trying to figure out how you navigate through that was a really interesting fact.
And then in creating a culture of agility, what have been the key kind of challenges and barriers that you faced in trying to shift the Team Marzetti kind of culture from a company perspective?
Yeah, I think this is hard, and I think this is hard for all of us. I would say individually it's hard for me, okay? None of us want to fail, right? There's not a single person in this room who says, I'm going to go into this thing and it's not going to work, right? We wouldn't do it if we thought that, right? Inevitably, when you have high achievers with high standards and really want to perform, we've got to give people the permission to fail, right? We have to say it's okay, right? If we did the right thing for the right reasons at the right time, that's the best that we can do. And you know, the team is back here. They would say, I'm probably 5 out of 10 in terms of doing that, and I can own that because it's the hardest thing to do, right? But being able to have those conversations, one of the things I said up there was acknowledge the risk, right? And just say, yeah, I get it. We're going fast. We don't have all the answers, but let's take the risk and we'll accept it together.
And that's really related to the next question, which is kind of talking about product launches that can be hugely challenging. What tips do you have for marketers here who are facing product launches that aren't meeting expectations? Guidance.
Since I'm an expert on this, you know, here's the biggest piece of advice I would have, and this the folks in the back of the room will tell you this. Nothing frustrates me more than when we try to tell a story as to why things aren't as bad as they are. Own where you are, face reality, and square into it. The fastest way to fix a problem is to get crystal clear on what the problem is and address it, right? And you know, there's a knowing look in the front of the room here. We've all been in those rooms where the initiative owner comes in and says, well, if you control for and you adjust and but we're fine. Well, you know what? If you're explaining, you're losing, right? And that is the fundamental truth. And so I think you tie that back to culture. Hey, look, let's be honest on where we are, right? If it's not working, our job at that point is to get as clear as possible as to why not. If we know the problem, guess what we can do? We can fix it, right? It's when we're humming and humming and humming and humming and humming and nobody owns up to the problem, that's when you really, really waffle.
That's great. And the other thing I would say is being on your agency team is the chance to see you in action with your brand teams on a daily basis. And I would say that you're a very inspired leader. And I kind of want to know, like, peek behind the curtain in your company, how do you motivate and how do you energize your brand leaders and your teams?
I did not agree to this question. That's decidedly uncomfortable. Yeah. You know, here's what I'd say. I would say as a leader, and each and every one of you are leaders, the hardest thing to do is to figure out how to connect and how to motivate, right? Because I'll tie this to VUCA, right? In a VUCA world, every single one of us is going through something at some point in time. Personal, professional, family, all of that stuff, right? And that naturally and inevitably impacts our performance, okay? So trying to stay as connected as possible, right? Trying to understand where people can be at various points in time and then being as open and as honest and frankly just human as we can be is the best approach, okay? You know, I'm kind of candid about this. I am a work in process, right? And so every day you try and get better, right? Why do I resonate with the Better Food Company? Because it is a journey. It's about getting better, right? And that's one of those things that I think is harder and harder and harder for each and every one of us day in and day out. Connecting, understanding. Yeah.
There's some questions in the room.
Yes, we have a few minutes. Yeah, question.
Thinking of Old Spice, which I remember Old Spice is a ceramic buoy. How do you decide, like, what do you see in a brand that gets to that point that you decide it's worth resurrecting rather than bringing something new to the market for that audience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would say it's somewhat, and I'll try and make it analogous to where we are and have been with some of the Marzetti brands. For me, and this is obviously up for debate, a defining characteristic that is authentic and ownable, right? You got to have something that you stand for. If you have a brand name and you know everybody thinks the brand could be anything, that's probably not a good place to be. Old Spice was very defined. It smelt like this, okay? But it was authentic and it was relevant. And now what was relevant about it was not that scent, right? But the idea of smelling good to attract women is timeless, okay? It's timeless, brother. And the fact that Old Spice started there, it was still recognized, albeit kind of retroactively for that thing, made it relevant. Way back.
Questions?
So I don't want to turn this into an Old Spice discussion, but I was managing Right Guard when you were on Old Spice.
Thanks for the share, brother.
Except for that shelf space I took from you at Walmart. But no, the reason why he doesn't know Old Spice Red Zone is because Old Spice decided to skip Generation X because the entry point for purchasing that category is that you're testing it at a young age, and by 21 you've already made your decision. When Old Spice reinvented itself, Gen X was aged out of that profile, right? So I just wanted to add a little bit of context to how important targeting of your message, not just having the right product and the right message, but also making sure you're targeting it to a relevant audience, because you didn't have to worry about changing the opinions of the whistling sailor because we were young enough in our generation to remember that advertising. You went after a consumer that didn't even know the brand and reintroduced it, right?
I love this guy, right? You're absolutely right. And to just expound on that, the original Reinvention support was 5th grade and 8th grade sampling, okay? It's not the media campaign that everybody knows. It wasn't. That all came, and that expanded and expanded and expanded and grew. But you go back to what happened. Clear choice on why to save it, what to be, who's the right target, and go to that point of market entry. And it literally was 5th and 8th grade sampling. Thank you.
Is anyone from Menon in the house? Right Guard?
Next. One more question.
You talked a lot about being agile in your planning and, you know, kind of being open to change. How do you balance that with making sure you know whether the current plan failed or succeeded?
Yeah, really good question. I think, let me try and tell you how we try and do it, okay? We build a plan and we recognize the things that we know could go wrong, right? The things that could go right, and then recognize the things that, man, we don't know, but if they were to ever happen, they would disrupt us, okay? And so if we're within those first two realms, then it's real easy to say, okay, well, are we executing our plan or. When you get to the third realm and the lever of, man, we never saw this coming, I don't care, right? Quite honestly, we are where we are. I think that's where you just have to stare into that and say, this is the situation. How do we build the best plan from this day forward? Okay?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And
Carl.
have a